What happens when gods on earth marry their own sisters? It's not a myth. It's history. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were more than kings. They were seen as living gods, and to keep their bloodline pure, many married their own sisters, even daughters. This was rare. It was a tradition, a royal strategy. But what started as a way to protect power slowly turned into a nightmare behind. The golden thrones and stone temples, dark secrets hid in the blood. Generations of inbreeding caused twisted spines deformed. Bodies and deadly diseases. Children were born sick. Some never lived past their teens. Gods, it seemed, were not so invincible after this video well uncovered the genetic tragedy behind Egypt's royal families, from divine marriages to tragic deaths. This is the haunting story of history's most inbred rulers and how their pursuit of purity led to their downfall. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not just a ruler. He was a god in human form. The people believed he carried the blood of the gods. His word was law. His body was sacred. But with great power came a strange tradition: keep their bloodline divine. Egyptian rulers often married within their own family. Brothers married sisters, uncles married nieces. Some even took their own daughters as wives. It sounds shocking today, but for them it was royal duty. This wasn't about love. It was about power. By marrying their own kin, pharaohs kept the throne within the family. They didn't want outsiders to claim the crown. Marrying a sibling meant no new blood, no risk of losing control. Religion also played a big role. The gods in Egyptian mythology, like Osiris and Isis, were siblings and husband and wife. By copying the gods, the royals believed they were honoring the divine order. Idea of pure blood became a dangerous obsession. This wasn't just a one-time thing. It happened dynasty after dynasty. It became normal among the royal elite. Marrying someone outside the family was often seen as a threat. Some even wrote it into law. The 18th dynasty, sibling marriage became almost expected for the heir to the throne. Pharaohs like Akhenaten and later his son Tutankhamun followed the same path. Even when these unions led to sick or weak children, the tradition continued. Why? Because bloodline mattered more than health outside the palace. The average Egyptian didn't marry close family. This practice was reserved for kings, queens, and high priests. It was their way of showing they were not like ordinary people. They were above the rest, chosen by the gods. But there was a hidden cost. Inbreeding doesn't just preserve bloodlines. It also passes on hidden genetic flaws. When close relatives have children, those flaws become more visible. Over generations, the effects grow worse, leading to disease, deformity, and early death. And yet the royals kept going. The belief in divine blood was stronger than science or reason. They believed their blood gave them power, but in truth, it was killing them slowly. This chapter in Egypt's royal history is not just about strange marriages. It's about how faith, power, and fear can blind even the most powerful people. They weren't just trying to stay in control. They were trying to stay godlike. In doing so, they passed down not just crowns, but curses. Practice of royal incest in Egypt didn't start suddenly. It had deep roots going as far back as 2000 BCE. In the 11th dynasty, there are signs that incest was already a part of royal life. Pharaoh Khufu, the man behind the Great Pyramid, may have married his half-sister. His mother could have been both sister and wife to his father. Records from this time are limited, but the clues are there still. Incest wasn't always the rule during the Middle Kingdom. Some rulers married outside the family. In fact, it seemed the tradition faded for a while. The practice of sibling marriage rose and fell depending on the dynasty and the rulers. Beliefs, it wasn't a straight line. It was a pattern shaped by politics, religion, and ambition. But then came the New Kingdom. From 1570 to 1070 BCE, incest within the royal family became more common and more extreme. Pharaohs no longer just married half-sisters. Some married full sisters. Others may have taken daughters as wives. Why? Because power needed purity, and purity meant marrying those with the same divine blood. These early cases set the stage for what would follow, a royal tradition that ignored biology in favor of belief. And as the generations passed, the risks of inbreeding began to rise. The dynasty that sought strength through sacred blood would soon find that blood turning against them. If there was ever a dynasty that truly embraced incest, it was the 18th. This period from around 1550 to 1290 BCE is often seen as the height of Egypt's power, but behind the wealth and monuments, something darker was happening inside. The royal family Pharaoh Akhenaten is one of the most mysterious rulers in Egyptian history. He turned the religion of Egypt upside down, forcing everyone to worship one god, Aten the sun disk. He also broke tradition with how he looked, how he ruled, and whom he married. Akhenaten is believed to have married one of his own sisters. Historians often refer to her as the younger lady, since her true name remains uncertain. What we do know is that this couple produced one of Egypt's most famous kings, Tutankhamun. Years later, modern scientists used DNA testing to uncover the truth. Tutankhamun was the child of a full brother-sister union. It was one of the first confirmed cases of royal inbreeding in history. The evidence is locked in his bones, but the mystery doesn't end there. Ancient art from Akhenaten's reign shows him with a long face, wide hips, and a soft, almost feminine body. Some believed it was just a new artistic style. Others wondered if these were signs of a genetic disorder, perhaps caused by generations of inbreeding. Was it art or illness? The debate continues to this day. Akhenaten's daughters may have been both his children and his wives, and his son. Tutankhamun was married to his own half-sister Ankhesenamun. The royal circle kept folding in on itself. These weren't accidents. They were royal decisions made over and over again. 18th dynasty didn't just flirt with incest. They embraced it, believing it would keep their bloodline divine, untouched, godlike. But that belief had a price, a heavy one, because while the temple stood tall, the bodies inside the palace were growing weaker, and soon that weakness would become impossible to ignore. Tutankhamun. The name echoes through history. The boy king, the golden pharaoh, but behind the glittering mask was a body full of pain. For a long time, no one knew much about King Tut's life. He died young, around 18 or 19 years old. He left no heir. His tomb, however, was filled with treasures. When it was discovered in 1922, it amazed the world. What it didn't reveal at first was the truth about his health. Decades later, scientists used CT scans and DNA testing to study Tutankhamun's remains. What they found shocked even the expert. Tut had a cleft palate. His spine was curved. One of his feet was deformed. He had a clubfoot. Evidence showed he needed a cane to walk. Over 130 walking sticks were found in his tomb, not as royal symbols, but as daily tools. He also suffered from bone necrosis, a condition that caused parts of his bones to die and rot from the inside. His immune system was weak. DNA showed he likely had malaria not once, but multiple times. This wasn't just bad luck, it was genetic. Tutankhamun's parents were full siblings. That's not speculation, it's proven by DNA. Both his mother and father came from the same royal blood. They were brother and sister. Their child born from that union carried the burden, and it didn't stop there. Tut married his half-sister Ankhesenamun. Together they had 2 daughters. Both were stillborn. Their tiny mummified bodies were buried with Tut in his tomb. A tragic reminder of how inbreeding continued to damage the royal line. Medical experts agreed Tut's many health problems, especially his weakened bones and immune system, likely contributed to his early death. He wasn't killed in battle. He didn't die in glory. He may have died from a broken leg infected by malaria, or simply from a body that couldn't keep fighting. The image we see, the golden coffin, the perfect mask, is a lie. It hides a truth far more fragile. Tutankhamun wasn't a powerful king. He was a sick child trapped in a royal system, a system that placed divine blood above human health. And he paid the ultimate price for it. His story stands as the most famous example of how inbreeding crippled Egypt's rulers, not just politically, but physically. The gods may have protected the throne, but they didn't protect the genes. The story of royal inbreeding didn't end with Egypt's native pharaohs. After their fall, a new ruling family took the throne, the Ptolemies. They were Greek descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals, but even as outsiders, they quickly embraced Egypt's old customs, including incest. In fact, they took it even further. Ptolemy II married his full sister Arsinoe II. This wasn't hidden, was celebrated. They were worshipped as a divine couple. Just like Osiris and Isis, from then on most Ptolemaic rulers followed the same path, brother. Married sister. Again and again, one of the most famous examples is Cleopatra, the seventh, the last queen of Egypt. She's remembered for her intelligence, her beauty, and her romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. But less talked about is her own family, Cleopatra. Married both of her younger brothers, Ptolemy the 13th and Ptolemy the 14th, at different times. It was expected of her. Their parents were likely siblings too. The dynasty had been repeating this pattern for generations. Unlike King Tut, the genetic effects weren't always obvious, but there were signs records suggest that some Ptolemies suffered from health issues, obesity, unusually large eyes, and swelling of the neck. These symptoms point to possible Graves' disease or fibrosclerosis, both conditions that can run in families. Still, the Ptolemies ruled for almost 300 years. They maintained power not just through marriage, but by tying themselves to both Egyptian and Greek traditions. Incest in their eyes was not shameful. It was sacred. It kept the dynasty close, strong, protected. But in the end, even they couldn't escape decline after Cleopatra's death in 30 BC. The Ptolemaic line ended. Egypt became a Roman province. The era of royal incest came to a close, not because they saw the danger, but because they lost the throne. Their blood stayed pure, but their power didn't, and like the pharaohs before them, they left behind a legacy of ambition, devotion, and self-destruction. Would anyone choose to marry their own sister, or even their own child? To us, it sounds unthinkable, but for ancient Egypt's rulers, it made perfect sense. Reasons were not emotional. They were religious, political, and deeply cultural first. There was the belief that pharaohs were gods on earth, not just chosen by the gods, but divine themselves. Their blood was seen as sacred, holy. If they mixed that blood with commoners, it would dilute the power. So to stay pure, they kept it in the family. Incest became a way to protect the throne, not just from outsiders, but from spiritual corruption. Then came power and property. Egypt's royal families owned immense land, treasure, and authority. Marrying inside the family meant those riches stayed where they belonged, in royal hands. No one outside the bloodline could make a claim. No rival family could rise through marriage. It was control, tight, calculated control, but there was also something deeper: cultural acceptance. Egyptian mythology itself was full of divine couples who were also siblings. The god Osiris married his sister Isis. Their story was known in every corner of the land. If the gods did it, then surely it was not only allowed, but ideal. This religious backing gave royal incest a kind of moral shield. It wasn't just allowed. It was sacred, glorified in this world. Marrying your sister didn't bring shame. It brought status even forward. Rulers like the Greek Ptolemies adopted this custom when they took over Egypt. Why? Because it worked. It reinforced their power. It gave them legitimacy in the eyes of the Egyptian people. But what they gained in loyalty, they lost in health. Generation after generation, the royal families traded long-term survival for short-term control. The blood stayed pure, but the bodies broke down in the end. The same thing that gave them strength would also bring their downfall. From the dawn of the Old Kingdom to the fall of the Ptolemies, one theme remained constant. In Egypt's royal history, incest wasn't an accident. It was a strategy, a deliberate plan to hold on to power, protect divine status, and preserve royal wealth. Rulers believed they were gods on earth, and gods they thought should not marry mortals. So they turned inward, brothers marrying sisters, fathers marrying daughters. Dynasty after dynasty followed this path. It worked, at least for a time, but it came with a hidden cost. Behind the golden tombs and towering temples were real people, and those people were hurting, crippling. Genetic disorders spread silently through the royal line. Children were born sick. Some couldn't walk. Others didn't live long enough to rule. Stillborn heirs. Twisted spines, frail bodies, hidden pain. Even Tutankhamun, Egypt's most famous king, died young, likely from the same bloodline that was meant to make him strong. In their pursuit of purity, the royals made a choice. They gambled with their own flesh and blood, and they lost. History remembers the power, the pyramids, the gold, the names, but it also remembers the tragedy, the physical suffering, the lonely deaths, the irony of rulers brought down not by war, but by their own genes. Because when royalty plays God with nature, the outcome is rarely divine, it's human, and it's tragic.